Hello, boys and girls. On today's story, boys and girls, our focus scale will be on setting. Setting. What is setting, boys and girls? Well, setting is very important to a story because the setting can tell us where and when. Where, boys and girls, means where does the story happen? Okay? Stories can happen, boys and girls, around the world, different locations. Where are the characters at? It can happen even in space, maybe. It can happen in a forest, in a home, a school. It can happen on a train, or they can even happen in a castle. So when we know where the story is at, boys and girls, we look at the surroundings around us, okay? We look at what are they? We look for any clues to help us figure out where the story is taking place. And we also know when it's taking place, okay? So when and where go together to help us determine the setting. When does the story take place? We also look for clues because sometimes the story, boys and girls, can take place at night, or it can take place during the day. You see the sun. The time. When does the story take place? History. When was it? Sometimes characters, boys and girls, can tell us once upon a time because it goes back into time, a long time ago. Or during the seasons of the year, during the winter, during the spring, or during the fall, or the summer. When? What month? When was it happening? So we look for all these clues in the story, boys and girls, to help us find the setting. Where does the story happen? And when does the story happen? You ask yourself, why is the setting important to the story? It has important because it tells us a lot about what the characters might be doing, how they're acting, where they at. So setting, boys and girls, is very important when reading a story. Look for those clues around the story to help us determine when and where. Hello, boys and girls. So before we start reading our story, Abuela, we will be going over our vocabulary that we will be seeing in our story. Our first vocabulary word is the word pointing. Pointing. Let's look at our picture right here, boys and girls. What do you see? Right. We see some airplanes flying up in the sky, and we see two kids. We see a little boy and a little girl, and they are pointing towards the sky. So pointing is when you're trying to see something for somebody else to see. We want them to see it. Pointing, boys and girls, is a verb. Pointing, a verb, boys and girls, shows the action of something. And as we saw in the picture above, the little kids were pointing at something. For example, the meaning of pointing means if you are pointing, you are using a finger to show someone where to look. So you're showing something to somebody because you want them to see something. For example, Jenny was pointing to the plane in the sky. And then we go back, we see them pointing to the sky at the airplanes. Pointing. Our next vocabulary word is the word close. Close. Now close can mean two words the same, can probably mean something else for you, like close the door, or close, like right here, that they're very close together. This word, boys and girls, means close, when you come very close to each other, like the way you see The mom here and the little girl, they're touching their foreheads. They're very close to each other. Close, boys and girls, is an adjective. Remember that adjectives describe something. The meaning of close is if you are close to something, you are near it. It's nearby, it's close to you. For example, Gabby's mother is holding her clothes. And if we look again, her mom, the little girl's mom, is holding her really close together. Our next vocabulary word is the word docked. Docked. What do we see here? Right, we see an ocean, we see a big beautiful sky, and a big ship by the shore where people are loading or it's docking people. Okay? So pretty much people are getting on or getting off, and it has to come here by this little bridge for people to get on, right? So docked, boys and girls, means or is a verb, because a verb, again, once again, shows the action of what it's doing. Docked means if a ship is docked, it has stopped next to a place where people get on and get off it. So in order for the people to get on the boat, boys and girls, it has to be docked. Kind of like parked. Like a car is parked for you to get on or stopped. So it has to be stopped and docked for people to get on and get off. Okay? Example. The cruise ship is docked at the pier. Next vocabulary word. The word is unload. Unload. What do we see here in this picture, boys and girls? Yes, we see a mom or two girls, a mom, probably her daughter, and they're getting groceries off their car and they're carrying them. Just the same way when you go with your parents to H-E-B and you have to take the groceries off the car to put them in your house into the fridge. So they're unloading their car. Unloading, they're getting the groceries off. Unloading, boys and girls, is a verb. A verb. Remember that a verb shows you action of what the person or thing is doing. Unload means when you unload things, you take them off a ship, truck, or other thing that has carried them. So as we saw in the picture above, they are unloading their car or their truck. They're getting it off. Example. Together we unload the bags of groceries from the car. Our next vocabulary word. Harbor. Harbor. What do you see in this picture, boys and girls? Right, correct. We see lots of boats that are docked around by the bay. They're parked. Lots of like buildings or houses or apartments. Lots of mountains in the background. Beautiful scenery. It looks really beautiful here. And trees. I wonder where they could be at here. Because we don't see this in our area, boys and girls. Lots of mountains like this. Harbor, boys and girls, is a noun. So we all know what a noun is, right? A noun is a person, a place, thing, or animal. And a harbor, if we look at the harbor, this is the whole harbor right here. What do you think the harbor could be? Correct. It's a place. The harbor is a place, boys and girls. Example. A harbor is a place along the seacoast where boats go out or come in and can stay safely. Boats can easily go in and out of this harbor. So usually you'll find the harbor where there's water like this along the coastline or along like where there's water, because the boats belong in water for them to go in and out of where they're being docked. Harbor. So these are our vocabulary words, boys and girls. Let's go over them one more time before we go into our story. Our first word is the word pointing. Pointing. Our next vocabulary word is the word close. Close. Our next vocabulary word is the word docked. Docked. Our next one is the word unload. Unload. And our last one is the word harbor. Harbor. Hello, boys and girls. Today we are going to be reading a story titled Abuela, which in English is called grandmother. And this story, boys and girls, that today we will be reading is also a fantasy story. Do you know what a fantasy story is? Good. Good job. A fantasy story is something that is make-believe. What makes us think the story is make-believe? Can we look at the pictures on the front cover? Let's look at our title or cover on our book cover, the title, to see what makes us think this could be a fantasy story. Right. We see the abuela or the grandmother flying and the little girl high up in the sky. That's already giving us a clue why it's a fantasy, because we know us humans, we cannot fly up in the sky. So that would be something that's fantasy. Also, boys and girls, if we look at the background, we see lots of buildings. So, I wonder where this story can also take place. Remember, settings, boys and girls, is where the story takes place, where and when. And settings can change throughout the story. They can have different places. Our story, boys and girls, also has an author and an illustrator. Our author is by Arthur Doros and illustrated by Elisa Clevin. An author, boys and girls, writes the story and also sets a purpose for us. What is the purpose that he wrote this story? Either is he writing to entertain us, to inform us, or to persuade us. And we have a clue, because if this story is fantasy, it's not real, it's make-believe. I wonder what his purpose could be. And illustrated by Elisa Clevin. The illustrator, boys and girls, draws these beautiful, colorful pictures to bring life to these characters for us to be able to enjoy and understand the story. So as we get ready to read our story, one more time, our story is called, the title is Abuela, which in English we say grandmother, by Arthur Doros, illustrated by Elisa Clevin. And as we read the story, boys and girls, let's pay close attention to what is the author's purpose? What does he want us to learn from this story? Remember, it's a fantasy story, so let's pay close attention to the characters and what they're doing throughout the story. Abuela, one more time, by Arthur Doros, illustrated by Elisa Clevin. Author writes the book, illustrator draws the illustrations in the book. Okay, so on the first page we see them getting into a bus.
Abuela takes me on the bus. We go all around the city.
Okay, so they go on the bus, boys and girls. A bus is a type of transportation that we take to take us to our destination. And it looks like they are going around the city. I wonder what they're going to go do in the city. let's continue reading.
Abuela is my grandma. She is my mother's mother. Abuela means grandma in Spanish. Abuela speaks mostly Spanish because that's what people spoke where she grew up, before she came to this country. Abuela and I are always going places.
Okay, boys and girls, so Abuela is her grandma. So this little girl, that's her grandma. How many of you still have your grandmas? I know I still have mine. So Abuela means grandma in Spanish. And her grandma, boys and girls, speaks only what language? Right, Spanish, because that's the language that she mostly grew up in from the country that she comes with. How many of your grandmas only speak one language? Good. I know my grandma only speaks one language as well. Okay, and they're always going places. I wonder where they're going. To the city, maybe? Let's find out. Next page. And let's notice at our surroundings, okay? Look at how they're dressed, the people there. The setting. Right now they're in a bus. I'm sorry. Yes, a bus. Okay, boys and girls, look at where they're at now. You see how the setting of the story can change? Where they're at? I see lots of birds in the background. Trees, people playing, having a picnic. I wonder where they can be at.
Today we're going to the park. El parque es lindo, says Abuela. I know what she means. I think the park is beautiful too. Tantos pájaros, Abuela says, as a flock of birds surrounds us. So many birds. They're picking up the bread we brought.
Okay, so as we read, boys and girls, we know that she is at the park. They're at the park. And the grandma loves the park because she says el parque es lindo, which means the park is beautiful. Why do you think she thinks the park is so beautiful? Yes, because there's lots of beautiful birds flying around. What do they feed the birds, boys and girls? A big flock of birds. Yes, bread. They give them some bread. So it looks like they're at the park right now, enjoying some time together. And notice how the grandma speaks Spanish. You see, el parque es lindo, tantos pájaros, because that's mostly the language that she spoke because of how she grew up and the country that she's from. Okay, next page. Looks like they're still at the park because we see lots of kids or people playing, riding bikes, the birds. Oh, what do you see over here? What is she doing? A little lake where people can fish, maybe. A little boat. Let's see what happens here.
What if they picked me up and carried me high above the park? What if I could fly? Abuela would wonder where I was. Swooping like a bird, I'd call to her.
Oh, so now the little girl, boys and girls, she's thinking, imagining, what if the birds could carry me high above the park? So if the birds, we see right here how they're kind of getting on, picking up her shirt, they're grabbing her. So that means they're picking her up so she's able to fly like them. But is she really flying if the birds were to let go of her clothes? No, right? She'd probably fall because they're the ones holding her up high in the air. How would you feel if you would be able to fly? Next page.
Then she'd see me flying. Rosalba the bird. Rosalba el pájaro, she'd say. Bien, abuela, come, abuela, I'd say. Si, quiero volar, abuela would reply, as she leaped into the sky, with her skirt flapping in the wind.
Okay. So Rosalba, boys and girls, is the little girl's name. That is her name in the story, Rosalba. So Rosalba, boys and girls, she'd be flying like a bird, right? Rosalba el pájaro. That's what grandma would call her. She'd say, ven abuela, come abuela. That means come abuela. Si quiero volar. So then they're imagining that they'd be able to fly like the birds, right? Rosalba el pájaro is what grandma would call her if she would fly like the birds. So I wonder what would happen next. Let's find out. So now, boys and girls, look at the setting of the place. It has changed, right? Now we see lots of buildings all across the city. And what are they doing? They're flying over the city, boys and girls. Imagine if you were able to fly like them, how would you feel?
We would fly all over the city. Mira, abuela would say, pointing, and I'd look as we soared over parks and streets, dogs and people.
So if they were able to fly, boys and girls, they would look, they would soar. Soar, boys and girls, is when you kind of like just fly with your wings high in the air, over parks, over streets, over dogs and people, because that's everything they see down here. You'll be able to see everything around the city when you're flying. Would you like to fly like Rosalba and Abuela? Let's move on to the next page.
We'd wave to the people waiting for the bus. Buenos dias, we'd say. Buenos dias, good morning, they'd call up to us. We'd fly over factories and trains.
So if they were able to fly, or if they're flying, they would wave for people waiting at the bus, boys and girls. They would say, Buenos dias. Buenos dias, boys and girls, means good morning in English. Buenos dias means good morning in English. They would say good morning, and they would fly over factories and trains. If I would be able to fly, boys and girls, it looks like it'd be faster to get to where you're going, because they're moving fast across the sky, across the city. Isn't that awesome, boys and girls? Abuela and Rosalba are getting to go all over the city by flying. Okay, over here we see them over a little market, a little plaza as well. You see them right here. The train is right there. Let's find out what happens next. Now, where do you see them? Our setting of the story, now they're in a different place. Where are they? Right, they're in the ocean maybe. I see boats. I see a ship in the back. Water beneath them. So now they're flying over the sea maybe. By the city. Let's find out.
And glide close to the sea. Cerca del mar, we'd say. We'd almost touch the tops of waves. Abuela's skirt would be a sail. She could race with the sailboats. I'll bet she'd win.
Oh, so now, boys and girls, close to the sea, in English, boys and girls, close to the sea means in Spanish, cerca del mar. So now they would be close to the sea, which is the beach. Or another word we know it as the beach, right? And they'd be flying over it. And look at her skirt, boys and girls, because of the wind, how it's flying. It looks like one of the sails. It looks like one of these also, right? That helps the boat move. The wind pushing against it. So it looks like they're having so much fun flying over across the city. Next page.
We'd fly to where the ships are docked and watch people unload fruits from the land where Abuela grew up. Mangoes, bananas, papayas, those are all Spanish words. So are rodeo, patio, and burro. Maybe we'd see a cousin of Abuela's hooking boxes of fruit to a crane. We saw her cousin Daniel once, unloading and loading the ships.
Oh. So now, boys and girls, they are at the docking area. And a docking area is one of your vocabulary words. Docked is where the ships park to kind of unload and load, to get things off and to get things on. And that's what you see people doing here. You see the ship on the side, and they have like a little ramp going up, and they go up and they get things off the boat, or they load up the boat. Look at the back over here. You see this right here? The Statue of Liberty. Okay, so they're looking at where she's from, because they went the land where Abuela grew up. They have lots of fruits there. They have mangoes, bananas, papayas. Those are all Spanish words. Okay, so it looks like they're able to fly to all these places to look at all these different cities, things around the city. Next page.
Out past the boats in the harbor, we'd see the Statue of Liberty. Me gusta, Abuela would say. Abuela really likes her. I do too. We would circle around Liberty's head and wave to the people visiting her. That would remind Abuela of when she first came to this country.
Okay, boys and girls. So as it says, as past the boats in the harbor, we'd see the Statue of Liberty. This right here, boys and girls, is the Statue of Liberty. Do you know where this is located at? New York City. It's in New York. And this statue represents, it's a freedom or a friendship that was given to us from a different country. And this reminded Abuela, boys and girls, of when she first came to this country, because this statue represents freedom right here, part of the United States. And it's on a little island, and lots of water is surrounded by it. People can go visit there, as you can see right here. They can go to the top of the Statue of Liberty, and they can visit the bottom as well. So this is special to Abuela because it reminded her when she first came to this country from where she's from. So there you see them. Abuela really likes the Statue of Liberty, and they're flying over. Okay, next page.
Vamos al aeropuerto, she'd say. She'd take me to the airport, where the plane that first brought her landed. Cuidado, Abuela would tell me. We'd have to be careful as we went for a short ride.
So now, boys and girls, they are at the airport. In Spanish, it says aeropuerto. And an airport, boys and girls, is where all the planes land and where they leave from also. They depart. And an airplane is a type of transportation that takes you to a different place a bit more quicker than you would probably go in your own car. So lots of people travel in airplanes, and Abuela went there because Abuela came here to this country in an airplane. Okay, the plane that first brought her landed. Okay, cuidado, boys and girls, means to be careful. So they went on a little short ride. So we see lots of airplanes down here because this is where at the airport where they land and where they leave from, where people get on airplanes. And it's always very, very busy there, boys and girls. So let's move on to the next page. On the next page, boys and girls, we see now they are at a different place. So as you have seen around, boys and girls, we have noticed that the setting of the story has changed. They were at the dock, they were at the airport. Now they're at a store. So the characters are moving around, and so is the setting. It is changing.
Then we could fly to Tio Pablo's and Tia Elisa's store. Pablo is my uncle, my tio, and Elisa is my aunt, my tia. They'd be surprised when we flew in, but they'd offer us a cool limonada. Flying is hot work. Pero quiero volar más, Abuela would say. She wants to fly more. I want to fly more too.
So even flying can be tiring, right? I guess because they stopped for a little break. Where did they stop? At Tia Elisa's store. At Tio Pablo's and Tia Elisa's store. And Pablo is my uncle, which is you call your tia in Spanish. And they drank a cool limonada, which is lemonade in English, limonada. But Abuela would say what? Quiero volar más, meaning she wants to keep on flying to see more of the city and fly over and soar. Okay, so here you see them at the store, boys and girls. You see them stopping, and there's lots of things to buy. Here's Tio Pablo and Tia Elisa. And then you see them here drinking their cool lemonade. Let's find out more. Let's keep on reading.
We could fly to las nubes, the clouds. One looks like a cat, un gato. One looks like a bear, un oso. One looks like a chair, una silla. Descansemos un momento, Abuela would say. She wants to rest a moment. We would rest in our chair, and Abuela would hold me in her arms with the whole sky, our house, nuestra casa.
So boys and girls, they would fly to the clouds, which is called las nubes. And how many of you have ever seen clouds that form different pictures, and you look up in the sky and you can say, oh, I see a rabbit, or I see a dog. So here, one looks like a cat. One looks like an oso. I can see the bear right there. You see the osito? The bear. One looks like a chair. Here's the chair where they're sitting in a big fluffy chair. Now, boys and girls, do you think this story, oh, and down here we have the little cat, the black cat. I know, boys and girls, that this is not, it's a fantasy, right? So that means it's not real, because I know I would not be able to fly all over the city or sit even on the clouds, boys and girls, like this. So as you're reading, pay attention to what the author's purpose is for this story. Do you think the author could be informing us about a little girl and her grandmother flying? Is he persuading us? Is he telling us that flying is the best thing to do? Or is he entertaining us about a little girl and her grandmother flying over the city? What do you think the purpose is? Is it entertaining us? Is it persuading us? Or informing us? Next page.
We'd be as high as airplanes, balloons, and birds, and higher than the tall buildings downtown. But we'd fly there too, to look around.
So they like flying because it'd be higher than airplanes, balloons, and birds. They'd be up, up, up in the sky, boys and girls. Sorry, I went too far. Right here.
We could find the building where my father works. Hola, Papa, I'd say as I waved. And Abuela would do a flip for fun as we passed by the windows.
So then they pass by everybody, waving bye to people as they see them, to her dad, Papa. And it looks like they're having lots of fun. Abuela is loving flying as she's doing flips right there, boys and girls. Do you have a clue already about what the author's purpose is? Good. I think the author is entertaining us because he is giving us a story that's make-believe. First of all, it's fantasy about a little girl and her grandmother flying all over the city. Good job. He's entertaining us.
Mira, I hear Abuela say. Look, she's telling me. I do look. And we are back in the park.
So now, boys and girls, they are back where they first started, which was the park. They are back at the park where they first started.
We are walking by the lake. Abuela probably wants to go for a boat ride. Vamos a otra aventura, she says. She wants us to go for another adventure. That's just one of the things I love about Abuela. She likes adventures.
So now they're back at the park, boys and girls, and what does Abuela want to do now? Good. Vamos a otra aventura, which means let's go for another adventure. So and the adventure they went on right now, what were they doing? Yes, they were flying. So Abuela, boys and girls, loves adventure. She likes to be trying all these fun things with her granddaughter Rosalba. So I wonder what their new adventure could be. Do you have adventures you like to do, boys and girls?
Abuela takes my hand. Vamos, she says. Let's go.
So now, boys and girls, you see them getting onto the little boat. Kind of like a little paddle boat maybe. And they're going to get into the water. So that's probably a new adventure for them. I wonder what they could do when they get into that boat. Do you think the boat could also fly maybe? So boys and girls, as we were reading the story of Abuela and Rosalba, they traveled or they flew across different lots of places. And as I go back to the story, boys and girls, we're going to just review something quick about it. So we know that they started off at the park. They took a bus to get to the city. We go all around the city in the bus. Once they were at the park, boys and girls, they saw lots of beautiful birds, right? Beautiful birds. And the birds picked her up high up in the sky. Look at Abuela down here. They're on an adventure. Abuela joined her and called her Rosalba el Pájaro. They flew over the city where they could see the streets, the dogs, the people, the buildings. They waved at people down below at the bus station. You see them waving back to them as well. And over the train and a factory as well. They even flew over the sea, close by the ocean, cerca del mar. You see them going right there. Then they stopped or went by the dock where the ship would unload and load all these different type of fruits. They even flew over the Statue of Liberty, because this is what reminded Grandma when she first came to this country. They flew by the airport because the airport is where the plane that first brought her landed. They even stopped by Tio Pablo's and Tia Elisa's store for a cool lemonade. They flew to the clouds, las nubes, where they got to see all these different images of clouds forming. And they enjoyed looking down at the city. They soared higher than planes, than balloons and birds. And they even got to say hi to Dada, Papa. They waved bye. And they returned back to the park. What did Grandma want to do again, boys and girls? Vamos a otra aventura, which means another adventure in English. Another adventure. Do you have an adventure you like to do, boys and girls? Or your imagination? Remember, boys and girls, I hope that it's really fun to enjoy and be creativity and have our minds expand. I hope you enjoy the story, boys and girls.